Hello everyone, this is Jake from Fife Paranormal. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite parts of the paranormal. I say that sarcastically, and that's evidence review. Now, pardon the sarcastic tone, but evidence review really is fun. I know a lot of you are probably about to reach through your screens and, rip my throat out over that because evidence review can be really, really tedious. You have the entire investigation, which, a typical paranormal investigation is between 6 to 8 hours. I know for us, we usually have 2 or 3 voice recorders going at once. So simple multiplication, 8 times 3 is 24. So 24 hours worth of audio, typically, that we have to go through. And that doesn't include the hundreds of pictures, the hours and hours of video. We always have a camera rolling somewhere, always, the entire time. And then, of course, we have the trail camera. We have the live stream footage go through. So, long story short, a lot of this, it does add up. And if you want to be a very thorough investigator, you have to go through every little frame, every single second of everything. So, basically, you relive that same 8-hour investigation about 4 or 5 times before you're done with everything. You can wipe your hands clean with it. And that's even before you get to compiling it all together. If you're doing an episode, making the episode. So that's why, a lot of times with investigators, they're very good at retelling their experiences, retelling their stories and investigations because, they've lived through it about 7 or 8 times. So it's really cool also if you have a really active investigation. Like when we investigated St. Albans Sanatorium, our very first private investigation, I was really excited to get to evidence review. I think, we had the investigation on March 10th. I fell asleep at about 6 a.m. on March 11th, and I started evidence review at about 3 p.m. on March 11th. So I hit the ground running with it because, it was a really active investigation, and I wanted to see, what we missed. Because in the heat of the moment of crap happening all around you, there might be some EVPs or a shadow person you caught on film or on camera that you missed. And, going back to the EVPs thing, you are doing a spirit box session, you get tons of spirit box responses. Not only will you have those spirit box responses recorded, you might also have some awesome EVPs there as well. So it's almost like treasure hunting. You never know what you're going to find. You have a map, which the map is the entire audio file, video file, evidence file. And it's just a waiting game. It's almost like hunting. It's a mix of treasure hunting and hunting, which two weird analogies. But one thing that's very important to remember about evidence review is to not get tired. And what I mean by not get tired is if you're up to recorder number 3, 7 hours in, and you just get I don't care about this, I'm just going to zip through this, I don't really care, we have enough evidence. That's a really bad mindset to have because, you may have about 24 hours worth of audio. You go through 23 hours of that and you're like, okay, it's just one more hour, nothing's going to happen, I'm done. And in that 1 hour, you may have the greatest EVP ever recorded in the history of humanity. But because you were tired, you never found it. So what I like to do when I start getting tired of evidence review, I stop and I'll play a quick video game. Or I'll listen to music, or I'll read a book, or I will do something to kind of reset my mind from its heightened investigator senses mode. Every little sound you have to pick up, you're replaying every second over in your mind, and your mind eventually needs to reset and stop and go, and then usually I take about a 30-minute to an hour break, and then I'll come back to it with a fresh mind. And something that I like to do to try to get my mind back into it is I'll go back and look at about 5 minutes of video from the investigation, or I'll look at a bunch of pictures. And what that does is, you do a bunch of evidence review, you spend an hour listening to music, and then you come back, okay, Where was I at? What was I doing? What was I thinking? Oh, we were here doing this, talking about this. Okay, now I remember. And it starts coming back to you in your mind, that train of thought. And you kind of think of it as like rewinding your mind, your train of thought, back to the station that you were at during the investigation. Your exact same thought process. You're basically reinvestigating. It's just, you're not an active participant. Think about it like that. That's kind of a long-winded version, but that's kind of what I like to do. And sometimes evidence review will take a day. Sometimes it will take 3 days. Sometimes it even takes a whole week, depending upon how much evidence you have, what your schedule is, different things like that. So it's always very important to be thorough. And anytime you catch a voice or you think you see something, stop and just focus on that area in question over and over and over, and try to think of every possible cause for that anomaly or that strange voice. Try to think of the layout of the room. Think of everyone that was there. Even if you have to go back to the beginning of the session where everyone introduced themselves or you introduced everyone in the room, and try to get an idea of who was in the room, anything that could have caused it. Credibility is probably the most important thing in the paranormal field. And if you ruin your credibility just because you didn't want to be thorough, then, bad things happen. It's never good to have your credibility tarnished, torn, destroyed, because then no one will believe you, no one will be interested in your stories. There's a whole lot that goes into that. I won't go into it right now because we're talking about evidence review. Probably the quickest thing to review, and what I always review first, is the trail camera. Not everyone has a trail camera. It's just for us. That's the quickest, the first thing I always do. And then the second thing that I always do is I look at full spectrum camera pics, and then digital camera pics, iPhone camera pics, different things like that. It's the quickest because, typically on an investigation, we take about 300 to 400 photos sometimes. No, that's actually an inaccurate number. Typically, we take about 150 to about 250 photos on an investigation. So I like to go through every single one, kind of do the same process, put myself back in the moment of thinking, okay, this is the room we were in. We were doing this session. Did I ask at any time the spirits to show themselves? Is there any evidence that could possibly show intelligence spiritually? It's just this whole gigantic checklist. And then second, what I like to do is look at video. I usually start with my 2 camcorders first, and then I look at my iPad footage. We rarely shoot with the iPad anymore. We used to a lot. And then I'll look at iPhone footage, which Chris really doesn't shoot video on his iPhone. Aside from our live streams, I'm the one that usually shoots mainly with my iPhone because, it's in your pocket. It's so quick to just pull up, swipe left, hit video, and you record. And then after that, what I'll do is I'll go back and look at our live streams. I've actually never, compiled an entire live stream evidence into a full evidence review because I always just take the evidence from the recorder instead of from the live stream in the moment, which I might change that because seeing the evidence of the live stream in the moment, you can see how we react. You can not just hear, because on a voice recorder, you can hear, did you hear that? That was scary. Which, that only goes to a certain extent. But if you are seeing us visually react to it, hey, that was scary. You can see our eyes as big as dinner plates. You can see us turn as white as ghosts ourselves. It adds a bit more to the credibility of it because, something just happened that we can't explain. And, of course, what we like to do here at Fife Paranormal, we do like to try and find a logical explanation as soon as something happens. But what we found that we typically do is we'll let a paranormal event play itself out before we try to debunk it. And what I mean by that is if we're sitting down in a room and all of a sudden we hear footsteps, we'll stop. We'll mentally check, see, okay, could it be this? Could it be that? But while we're mentally checking to see if it is something paranormal, we'll ask questions such as, can you do it again? Is somebody here? Can you make a sound? Can you move something? Etc., etc., etc. And if something happens, great. But we usually give it about 30 seconds to about a minute to do something else. And if it doesn't do something else, then we'll immediately go, okay, what was that? What could it have been? What could have caused that? And so it's very important, I believe, to let a paranormal event play out, because, you may hear footsteps coming down the hallway. Everyone stops. What was that? Could it be this? Could it be that? And while you're sitting in a group talking about what it could have been, you've missed a voice. You've missed more footsteps. Your recorder might pick it up, but of course it's going to be contaminated by your team's voices, possibly your team moving around, different things like that. So review is... long story short, review can be tedious, but it is probably the most important part of an investigation. And I know that, when you think about the investigation process, you would think, oh, scouting the location or actually investigating is more important. And of course, investigating is very important. But in my personal opinion, I think the evidence review is even more important, because, you may have an investigation where a lot of stuff happens. You may have the coolest experience of your life. You may get the coolest spirit box clip of all time, and you and 7 other witnesses were there. You can all verify you heard it, you saw it, you felt it, you knew it. But unless you go back and pick it up on evidence review and save it for all time, all of eternity, so you can show it to the world as paranormal evidence, then that experience is just an experience that can't be backed up by evidence. And that is why evidence review is very important, because it can make or break an investigation. It can make an investigation 10 times better than it was, or it can completely ruin it and leave a sour taste in your mouth of the investigation. So I want to thank you all for watching this video, or more, listening to this video. What are your thoughts on evidence review? Do you think it's very important? Do you think it's as important as I'm making it out to be? And how do you do evidence review? If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, let you know if you've enjoyed the video, any thoughts, suggestions, series, anything you may have, and have a good day, everyone.